So we're going to design a 3D printed keychain. So we're going to start by opening up this template file. It's just an empty canvas for you to be able to create it on. Now we are going to create a keychain with your name. So over here in the left hand toolbar, there is a T option here. This T is the horizontal type tool. I'm going to simply click on that tool to turn it on and then click anywhere I want, and it's going to give me some text. And so I can go ahead and type in my name. Like that. Once I have my name, I can highlight it. And here's where I can customize what that's going to look like. So I can click on the little arrow next to the default font, which is probably just the last font you used, and you'll see a whole bunch of different fonts to choose from. And so I can go through and find a different font that I like. Maybe I want something like this one here. This next option right next to it is the size. So right now it's 11.04, but again, if I click on that, I can change that size. And so I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so that it's easier to see. And again, if I change my mind and decide, you know what, I think I want a different font, I can go ahead and adjust that. So maybe I like this one better. So the last option is I can change the color. So right now by default it is black, but if I click on this little black square here, this allows me to choose any color using what's called the color picker, where I can go back and forth, choose any color. Maybe I want it to be blue, and then any blue that I click on, it will change that color in the background. So maybe I want something kind of like that. Okay, so I'm done with my text, and I'm going to hit this check mark up here at the top to apply all those changes. If I change my mind at any point, I can always go back to the text tool and highlight that text again, or any part of that text. Maybe I want the M to be larger. I can do that. And so again, those options are either going to show up here, or I can adjust them up here at the top. They both do the same thing. So maybe I want the first letter to be larger. Something like that. So this looks okay. The problem is if I print this on a 3D printer, all of these letters are going to be separate. They're not connected. So if I'm trying to make a keychain, these letters are all going to be loose in my pocket because they're not going to be attached to each other. So in order to attach them, I need to do two things. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move the letters closer together. So up here at the top, I have this little tiny option. It's called the character panel. And when I click on it, it gives me these little options that pop up here. And there is one here that says VA. Right now it's set to 0. If I put my cursor over the little icon in front of it, not the number, but the icon in front of it, and click and hold down the mouse and drag, this will either, if I drag to the right, it moves things farther away. If I drag to the left, it'll move things closer together. So what I need is I need them to be close enough together so that they're either touching or almost touching. They don't have to totally touch just yet, but I do need them to be a lot closer together than what they were. So it looks like in this case -40 is about what I need. Now every font's going to be slightly different, so depending on what font you choose, this number might be bigger or smaller. Now if I needed to move just 2 letters closer together, so for example, instead of all of them being closer, there's a lot of space in between this W and the A. If I click and drag to highlight just these 2 letters, and then use that same button to click and drag, I can move just those 2 letters closer together like that. Or if these 2 letters are too close, I can click on these 2 letters and I can drag these letters again farther or closer by dragging them to the right or to the left. Now I'm also going to do it. I have a period here. I may not want the period since that's so small when it prints. So I might just take that period out and then control the amount of space between the R and the W. Again, clicking and dragging and adjusting it until it looks the way I want. So this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for things that are really close, but not actually touching. So I can still read it. If someone was to look at this, I could see, hey, I could read the names, I could read the letters. It's not all jumbled together. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here to my options at the very top, and there's an option under the layer menu that's called layer style. And under layer style, there's an option called stroke. That's what I want. What this does when I click on it is it will put a border around my letters. Now, it also opens up this window that gives you a bunch of settings. This is where I'm going to adjust how that looks. So by default, it says under stroke, these right here are the settings that I'm going to adjust. The position right now is listed on the inside. What that means is that border, that black border that's on the edge of my letters, is going to go inside my blue instead of on the outside of the letter. So I want that to actually be on the outside instead of the inside. And now you'll notice that that border is on the outside of my blue letters, and it makes them attach better. So again, if I turn that off just by unchecking this box, this is without that stroke applied. And if I check that box again, this is what it looks like with that stroke applied. Now, I can adjust the size of that stroke by clicking and dragging here. And I could either make it really big, or in this case, I want it big enough that it's going to get rid of all of the white space that would have existed between my letters. So if I'm like this, there's a lot of, technically they're touching, but there's some empty space in between these. And when I 3D print, there's a good chance that this letter could break off because it's just barely attached. So I want to adjust the size until all of that white or all of that empty space between my letters disappears, which will look something like this. So now when it prints, it will print the whole border all the way around with the color on the inside. Now, if I want to change the color, I can go down here to color and I can control what color the stroke or that border is. So if I wanted it to be red or if I wanted it to be green, I could go through and kind of adjust that as well. And click OK. So once I'm happy with the way that looks, I'm going to hit OK. And this is what my keychain is going to look like. Now, once I have this done, I'm ready to save it. So in order to save it, I'm going to go first of all to File and Save. That's going to ask me to save my Photoshop file. But now, in order to be able to send it to the printer, I'm going to need to save it again, but this time I need to do what's called Save a Copy. So I'm going to go to File, Save a Copy. And here's where it's going to ask for a name, and it's going to ask for the format. All right, for the name, I wanted to include my name and the word keychain. So I'm just going to put Wagner Keychain. And for the format, it has to be in what's called a PNG file. PNG will make the background invisible, which is what we need when it 3D prints. Otherwise, it's just going to print a giant rectangle. Now I can choose where I want it to go. I'm just going to save it to my desktop and then tell it to save. Once I've done that and turned it in, now I am ready to print.